Factors of production are the essential inputs needed to produce goods and services. These include land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Land refers to all natural resources, such as soil, minerals, and water. Labor is the human effort, both physical and mental, involved in production. Capital includes man-made tools, machinery, and infrastructure used to aid production. It's important to distinguish between physical capital, like equipment, and human capital, skills and education. Each of these factors earns a reward. Land earns rent, labor earns wages, capital earns interest, and enterprise earns profit. The entrepreneur plays a unique and critical role in the production process. They are responsible for bringing together the other three factors, land, labor, and capital, and organizing them efficiently. Entrepreneurs take on the risk of starting and running a business in the hope of earning a profit. They make key decisions, such as what to produce, how to produce, and for whom. In doing so, they drive innovation, respond to market signals, and help allocate resources efficiently. Without entrepreneurs, the other factors of production would remain idle and uncoordinated. Economics begins with a fundamental problem known as scarcity. This arises because human wants are unlimited, yet the resources available to satisfy those wants are limited. As a result, choices must be made, and every choice involves an opportunity cost, what you give up when you choose one option over another. To visually represent these trade-offs, economists use the production possibility curve, or PPC. The PPC shows the maximum possible combinations of two goods that can be produced using all available resources efficiently. Any point inside the curve indicates underutilized resources or inefficiency. Points outside the curve are currently unattainable unless there is growth, such as improvements in technology or an increase in resources. The shape of the PPC is usually bowed outwards, which reflects the law of increasing opportunity cost. This happens because resources are not perfectly adaptable between the production of different goods. For example, reallocating land and labor from farming to building airplanes won't be smooth or efficient. Turning to the concepts of demand and supply, these are the core forces in any market. Demand refers to the quantity of a good consumers are willing and able to buy at various prices. When factors such as income, consumer preferences, or the prices of substitutes and complements change, the entire demand curve shifts. Similarly, supply represents the quantity that producers are willing to sell at different prices. Changes in input costs, technological progress, or government intervention through taxes and subsidies can shift the supply curve. Market equilibrium occurs when the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. If the market price is below equilibrium, there's a shortage because demand exceeds supply. If the price is above equilibrium, a surplus results because supply exceeds demand. Elasticities measure responsiveness. Price elasticity of demand, PED, tells us how much quantity demanded changes in response to a price change. If PED is greater than 1, demand is elastic. This is typical for luxury goods. If it's less than 1, demand is inelastic, often seen with necessities. Income elasticity of demand, YED, indicates how demand changes with income. A positive YED means the good is normal, demand rises with income. A negative YED signals an inferior good, demand falls as income rises. Cross-elasticity of demand, XED, shows how the demand for one good responds to a change in the price of another. A positive XED means the goods are substitutes, while a negative XED indicates they are complements. Markets don't always work perfectly. Market failure happens when the free market doesn't allocate resources efficiently. In such cases, government intervention becomes necessary. Public goods, like streetlights, are non-rival and non-excludable, so private firms won't provide them efficiently, leading the government to step in. Merit goods, such as education and healthcare, are often underconsumed, so subsidies may be used to increase their provision. On the other hand, demerit goods like cigarettes are overconsumed, and the government may impose taxes to discourage use. Externalities, spillover effects from consumption or production, can be positive or negative. To correct these, governments may tax activities with negative externalities and subsidize those with positive ones. In macroeconomics, aggregate demand (AD) and aggregate supply (AS) determine the overall level of output and prices in the economy. Aggregate demand is made up of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports, which is exports minus imports. When any of these components increase, aggregate demand shifts to the right. Aggregate supply, on the other hand, is influenced by production costs and technology. If costs rise, AS shifts left. If technology improves, AS shifts right. Inflation can arise from either side. Demand pull inflation occurs when AD increases faster than AS. Cost push inflation results from rising production costs, which reduce AS. Unemployment can take several forms. Frictional unemployment happens when people are between jobs. Structural unemployment occurs when there's a mismatch between workers' skills and job requirements, often due to technological change or shifts in industry. Cyclical unemployment is tied to the economic cycle and typically rises during recessions when aggregate demand falls. Solutions vary. Training programs can address structural unemployment, while stimulus measures, like increased government spending, can combat cyclical unemployment. International trade is guided by the principle of comparative advantage, which says that countries should specialize in producing goods for which they have the lowest opportunity cost. This leads to efficiency and gains from trade. However, not all nations support free trade entirely. Protectionist policies, such as tariffs that tax imports and quotas that limit them, are used to shield domestic industries. To manage the economy, governments use several types of policies. Fiscal policy involves changing government spending and taxation to influence aggregate demand. Monetary policy uses interest rates to control money supply and demand. Lowering interest rates encourages borrowing and spending, raising AD. Supply-side policies focus on increasing long-run aggregate supply by improving the efficiency and capacity of the economy. These include investments in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. When it comes to exams, a few strategies help maximize marks. Always include relevant diagrams, such as the PPC, demand and supply curves, and AD, as models. Develop your answers using a clear chain of reasoning. Explain the cause, describe the effect, and analyze the impact. Finally, always evaluate. Acknowledge that while a particular policy might work, it can also lead to unintended consequences. Deflation is a sustained decrease in the general price level of goods and services in an economy over time. Unlike disinflation, which is just a slowdown in the rate of inflation, deflation involves prices actually falling. It often occurs when there is a significant drop in demand, leading firms to lower prices to encourage spending. While falling prices might seem good for consumers, deflation can be harmful to the economy. It increases the real value of debt, discourages spending and investment, and can lead to falling wages and profits. As a result, economic growth slows down and unemployment may rise. There are several causes of deflation. A demand-side cause could be a fall in consumer confidence, reducing spending. On the supply side, technological advances or increased efficiency can lower production costs, pushing prices down. To counter deflation, governments and central banks may use expansionary monetary policy, like lowering interest rates or increasing the money supply, or expansionary fiscal policy, such as increased government spending. These aim to boost demand and restore confidence in the economy. Now let's discuss the last topic: A current account includes trade balance of goods and services, investment income and current transfers. If outflow exceed inflow there is a deficit, and if inflows exceed outflows there is a surplus. Policies to correct deficit can include protectionism, currency devaluation, contractionary demand-side policies and supply-side policy. Exchange rate is the value of one currency in terms of another. Fall in exchange rate means depreciation, in which exports get cheaper and imports expensive, while in appreciation, exports are expensive and imports cheaper. However, the main impact depends upon price elasticity of demand. If exports become elastic but still not rising by that much due to inelastic demand, then it won't be that much effective. Terms of trade is ratio of average export prices over average import prices, or in other words, how much imports can be bought by current exports. When price of exports fall or imports rise, terms of trade worsens, while improvement has opposite reasons. However, the main impact of this will depend upon the reason of this change and the impact on trade balance, which depends upon elasticity. For some minor topics that are remaining. One important concept in economics is the division of labor. This refers to the process where the production of a good or service is broken down into a series of tasks, with each worker specializing in a particular task. Specialization increases productivity because workers become skilled through repetition, time is saved as they don't switch tasks, and it allows the use of machinery and automation. However, there are drawbacks. If a worker repeats the same task constantly, they may become bored, leading to reduced motivation and quality. Also, the entire production process may be disrupted if one worker is absent, especially in an assembly line system. Price controls are a common form of government intervention in the market. A maximum price is set below the market equilibrium to make essential goods more affordable, such as rent controls or basic food items. However, setting the price too low can lead to shortages, as demand exceeds supply, and black markets may emerge. On the other hand, a minimum price is set above equilibrium, often to protect producers. This is used in markets like agriculture or labor, e.g., minimum wage. While it supports producers' incomes, it can also create surpluses, where supply exceeds demand, leading to wasted resources or government having to purchase excess goods. Income inequality refers to the unequal distribution of income and wealth among individuals or groups in society. While some inequality is considered a natural result of differences in education, skills, and effort, high levels of inequality can cause social unrest and limit economic mobility. To reduce income inequality, governments can implement progressive taxation, where higher earners pay a larger percentage of their income in taxes. They can also increase spending on education, healthcare, and social security to level the playing field. Minimum wages, welfare programs, and subsidies for low-income households are also key tools. However, too much redistribution can reduce incentives to work or invest, potentially slowing down economic growth. Buffer stock schemes are used by governments to stabilize prices in volatile commodity markets. The government buys excess supply when there's a surplus, and releases stock when there's a shortage. This helps maintain a target price range, ensuring stable incomes for producers and affordable prices for consumers. Advantages include reduced price volatility and increased farmer security, which may encourage investment. But there are disadvantages too. Storing large quantities of goods is expensive, goods can perish, and if prices are kept too high, it may encourage overproduction, leading to inefficiency and waste. Economic growth refers to an increase in the productive capacity of an economy over time. This can be actual growth, an increase in real output due to fuller use of existing resources, or potential growth, which is the increase in an economy's capacity due to improvements in productivity, technology, or investment. Growth brings many benefits, such as higher incomes, improved living standards, and more employment opportunities. However, It may also bring disadvantages. Rapid growth can lead to environmental degradation, resource depletion, and increased inequality if the benefits are not evenly distributed. The circular flow of income illustrates how money moves through an economy. Households provide factors of production, like labor, to firms, and in return, they receive income in the form of wages, rent, and profits. Households then spend this income on goods and services produced by firms. This creates a continuous cycle. The flow can also include injections like investment, government spending, and exports, which boost the economy, and leakages like savings, taxes, and imports, which withdraw money from the cycle. The balance between these injections and leakages determines whether the economy grows or contracts. Finally, economic systems are frameworks within which economic activity takes place. In a free market economy, decisions are made by individuals and businesses with minimal government intervention. This system encourages efficiency, innovation, and consumer choice but can lead to inequality and under-provision of public goods. In a command economy, the government makes most economic decisions. It can ensure basic needs are met and resources are distributed more equally, but often lacks efficiency and innovation. A mixed economy combines both approaches, aiming to harness the strengths of each while minimizing their weaknesses. Most modern economies operate under a mixed system. So I hope you guys had a good quick revision. It's not that much detailed as it is for revision, but I hope it will help you. Take care.